There we go. Like I said, this is the mysterious prophecy of the trees, and I have studied and studied and studied and studied and studied on this, and this is given in 3 of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, but Luke adds another line to it, and I'm kind of searching out what that means. During the last week of his life, Jesus gave a detailed prophecy to his disciples about the end. It was known as the Olivet Discourse. It was delivered on the Mount of Olives after Jesus and the disciples had left the Temple Mount and crossed over into the Kidron Valley. Like I said, it's found in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21. He ended this comprehensive speech about the end times with a parable that prophetically indicated the time of his second coming. In Matthew 24, 32 through 35, it says, "Now learn the parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So you too, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near, right at the door. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." And this wasn't the first time that he used the symbolism as a fig tree. Fig tree represents Israel. Some of you know that. Earlier in the year, while teaching in the Perean province on the eastern side of the Jordan, Jesus had given his disciples another parable about a fig tree. On the eastern side of the Jordan, interesting, I read last night, the Jordan River, which is now the nation of Jordan, that the ancient land of Moab, and Ammon was there. These were the descendants of Esau. And God had given them this land. And that's a whole nother thing. But in Luke 13, verse 6 through 9, he began telling this parable. A man had a fig tree which had been planted in his vineyard, and he came looking for fruit on it and did not find any. And he went away to the vineyard, and he said to the vineyard keeper, "Behold, for 3 years I've come looking for fruit on this fig tree without finding any. Cut it down. Why does it even use up the ground?" And he answered and said to him, "Let it alone, sir, for this year too, until I dig around it and put in fertilizer. And if it bears fruit next year, fine, but if not, cut it down." This parable was a warning that if the Jewish people did not accept Jesus as Messiah, the wrath of God would be poured out on them, and their state would cease to exist. On the day Jesus made his entrance into Jerusalem, he warned the Pharisees and Jewish people there would be no peace because they did not recognize the signs of his coming. Kind of sounds like people not recognizing the signs of the rapture, the prophetic signs. They're going on all around us at a faster and faster pace. We're not recognizing them. We're not being in prayer. We're we're not being obedient, being in trust, we're going to miss it. And he said, when I return, will I find any faith on earth? What about those that call themselves Christians, but they are everything? You know, I say a Sunday saint and a Monday ain't. Yeah. Are you prepared to go? Are you prepared to be called when he calls? In Luke 19:41 through 44, when he approached Jerusalem, he saw the city and wept over it, saying, if you had known in this day, even you, the things which make for peace, but now they've been hidden from your eyes, for the days will come upon you when your enemies will throw up a barricade against you and surround you and hem you in on every side. And they will level you to the ground and your children within you, and they will not leave in you one stone upon another, because you did not recognize the time of your visitation. What about America? What's about to happen to America? There's a lot of speculation, a lot of prophetic speculation. I don't know for sure. I can only guess. But I believe this is a prophetic warning to the United States as well, that we're going to be overcome, taken. I'm not sure, because it's not in prophecy or not mentioned, the U.S. The day before his Olivet Discourse, Jesus gave his disciples another fig tree parable. This happened as they were walking from Bethany to Jerusalem by way of the Mount of Olives, when they encountered a barren fig tree. Mark 11:12 through 14 and 19 through 22. On the next day, when they had left Bethany, he became hungry. Seeing at a distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to see if perhaps he would find anything on it. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves. For it was not the season for figs. He said to it, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And his disciples were listening. When evening came, they would go out of the city, and as they were passing by in the morning, they saw the fig tree withered from its roots up. Being reminded, Peter said to him, Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered. And Jesus answered to them, have faith in God. This was a classic symbol of prophecy. You got to know what you're looking at. Like the fig tree, Israel had no fruit because the Jewish people had rejected Jesus as their Messiah. And that's why I ask you all the time, are you producing fruit? Continue to check yourself. Am I producing fruit? And if you're not, something's wrong. Like the fig tree, Israel had no fruit because the Jewish people had rejected Jesus as their Messiah. The curse Jesus placed on the tree was symbolic of the fact that the Jewish nation would experience the wrath of God and be set aside. And boy, did they. As they returned to the Temple Mount the next morning, they saw that the tree had withered. Later that same day, after visiting the temple, Jesus delivered his Olivet Discourse, and he reminded them of the fig tree. That's when he told them to watch it, because one day it would come alive again. And when that happened, the generation that witnessed it would also witness his return to earth. This is why he had told them that morning to have faith in God. Their state would be destroyed due to the rejection of their Messiah, but one day it would be reestablished again. We know in AD 70 that Rome came in and totally destroyed Israel. Killed, sent them off. God said they would be scattered to the ends of the earth, and they were. And Israel ceased to become a nation, ceased to be known as a nation. It just wasn't there anymore. It was desolate land. But in saying have faith in God, one day it would be reestablished again. We know that in 1948, Israel became a state again. But there was a lot leading up to that. The Balfour Declaration after World War I, when the British took control of what was called Palestine from the Ottoman Empire, it became under British control, and they turned it over to Israel. So God said, I cannot remember the scripture how it says, but that this would happen in one day, and it did. A nation that had ceased to exist for 2,000 years. I mean, completely ceased. It was mostly a desert. Nothing would grow, or very little. And we have never seen a nation disappear for that long and make a comeback. In fact, they wouldn't make a comeback at all, but Israel did. God brought them back. Then he told them a parable. Behold, the fig tree and all the trees, as soon as they put forth leaves, you see it and know for yourselves that summer is near. So you also, when you see these things happening, recognize the kingdom of God is near. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all things take place. This is the only one that says, behold the fig tree and all the trees. The other two just say, behold the fig tree. I've looked and looked and looked for an explanation on this, and I've seen many different things. Luke adds something that does not appear in Matthew's account. Luke says that in addition to watching the fig trees to come alive, we are to watch for all the trees. This is evidently a prophecy about the birth of many Gentile nations in the end times, at the same time that Israel is reborn as a sovereign state. I can't say that I agree with this. I can't say that I disagree with it, because it's not explained. It is not explained. So, has the fig tree come back to life? Yes, it has. And that is, again, is Israel. The Jewish people, displaced from the homeland for centuries, began showing signs of life during the second half of the 19th century, when waves of Jews started coming back to the land of Israel. Theodore Herzl, the father of Zionism, was the visionary behind the modern return of the people, Jewish people, and the reestablishment of a Jewish homestead. It goes on into the World Congress of Zionism that met in Switzerland. He became first president of the World Zionist Organization. Zionism seeks to establish a home for the Jewish people in Palestine, secured under public law The Balfour Declaration I just talked about, November 2nd, 1917, paved the way for the United States partition resolution for Palestine on November 29th, 1947. That is the first sign. That is the main sign of Christ's return. That is the beginning of the end, right there. Where am I at? The fig tree, which is Israel, came back to life during the first half of the 20th century, and Israel is now producing young figs that will be harvested at the end of the age. We know that from 1948 there were several Israeli-Arab wars. Of course, Israel has won everything. They've beaten back every enemy because of God that's come against them, and will continue to do so until the Antichrist fools them. I'm not going to finish that because I'm not just real sure. I have not found anything that backs this up, what he has to say. But I do want to go back to Luke 21, starting at verse 5. Then as some spoke of the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and donations, he said, "These things which you see, the days will come in which not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down." So they asked him, saying, "Teacher, when will these things be? And what sign will there be when these things are about to take place?" And he said, "Take heed that you not be deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, I am he, and the time has drawn near. Therefore do not go after them." We've seen that. Does anybody remember Jonestown in Guyana? I know most of us older ones do. Jim Jones took a lot of people down there and convinced them to drink the poisonous Kool-Aid. What about David Koresh?
Yeah. The seven seals.
There was one, I can never remember this one, when the Hale-Bopp comet was visible. Heaven's Gate. And they all committed suicide because the UFO was behind that comet that was going to take them home. Be careful who you listen to, because a lot of people are being deceived. A lot of people are being deceived by men of the cloth, pastors who have fallen away, have stepped away from doctrine, and are chasing after other things. But just like their master Satan, they're very subtle of how they get people to follow them. You have to watch, you have to listen, you have to be very careful paying attention to what they're saying and to where they're leading. But when you hear of wars and commotions, do not be terrified, for these things must come to pass first, but the end will not come immediately. We've heard of wars. We've seen wars. Like I said, Israel was born after World War I. Then came World War II, then Korea, then Vietnam. Now this is just American history. What about Ukraine and Russia? What does that have to do with prophecy? I don't believe it is. That whole thing was the United States has been behind this whole thing from the get-go. Then he said to them, nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be great earthquakes in various places. There have been more earthquakes recorded in the recent history. Earthquakes happening in places like Oklahoma that you would never expect. Famines and pestilences. We've seen the pestilence. Now, it was a government instituted thing, the COVID pandemic. I believe that was done to see how many people would follow the rules by the World Health Organization, who is really the New World Order, because their goal is to have every nation, every citizen, other than the global elitists, under their control. You will have nothing and you will be happy. You're going to eat bugs and you will be happy. You're going to be watched. What money you spend, we're going to watch it. And if we don't agree with it, we're going to stop you. You're going to be under a global currency. That is coming. That may happen this year. As a matter of fact, Prince Charles, King Charles, is one of the leaders involved in the World Health Organization. He has set a clock of 6 years and some odd months and days for us to get the climate agenda under control, or we're all going to die. Well, first off, let me tell you, there ain't no climate change, okay? Fear is a common factor used to control people. One person can say, I'm not listening to it, I'm not gonna, but a bunch of people, fear starts and it just spreads like a wildfire. And they're gonna start believing everything the government says, probably at gunpoint. I'm not sure. Even though the current administration, which I do not believe that President Obama is running, there is someone behind him that's calling the shots. They're all for the New World Order. In fact, President Obama, while he was president, very joyfully said, now is the time for a New World Order. All of that's being planned and implemented right now. Their goal is to have all of this under control by 2030. That gives us 6.5 years. Has the tribulation started? I don't think so, but I'm not sure. No, because we've not been raptured out yet. But I believe it could be any moment, any second. We're to be watching. I mean, look at the things that are going on. We've got that. We've got the global currency being planned and set up. Some countries have already implemented it. So get ready, because your cash ain't going to be no good. That's why I told Kathy, let's spend. I got a new Labrador puppy.
love for my husband to tell me that.
There's wildfires in Canada that are out of control, that they're saying lightning strikes, or they don't know what started them. It was arsonists that started them. It's been proven. Their president is as corrupt as they come. You see what's happening here. Scripture talked about good being called bad and bad being called good. You're seeing it. People are murdering people and going to jail for a little bit, then being set free. You got illegal immigrants coming across the border, raping and killing our children and women. You got Texas Governor Abbott that is putting a floatable border across the Rio Grande on his border, and now the federal government has said you can't do that. That's illegal. He said, well, I'll see you in court, Mr. President. And famines and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great sights from heaven. Another thing, speaking of pestilences, like I said, I looked at alternative sites. There were over 1 million mosquitoes bred with yellow fever loosed in India to see what would happen. It's biological warfare. It's exactly what it is. But before all these things, they will lay their hands on you and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and prisons. You will be brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. But it will turn out for you as an occasion for testimony. Therefore, settle it in your hearts, not to meditate beforehand on what you will answer. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all of your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist. You will be betrayed by even parents and brothers, relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death, and they will be hated by all for my name's sake. But not a hair on your head shall be lost. By your patience possesses your souls. I think that this was written to the generation that was alive then, but also applies to us now. How many times have we seen the pastor in Canada go to jail for speaking his mind? The Christians in England that are standing outside of abortion clinics, silently praying, being arrested. But when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its desolation is near. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Now this is speaking of future. Let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people, and they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now this is like a dual prophecy. This happens when Rome destroys Israel, and they're scattered to the nations. But if you go back to verse 21, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. This is talking about Petra. The mountains of Petra. There was a great city in Petra. Still there. It's a fortress, and that's where they're going to run to. The remnant that is to be saved of Israel. Because this is the time of the abomination of the Antichrist. There's so many things to look at, to be prepared for. I mean, what about the 5 perfect red heifers that have been taken, that a rancher in Texas donated to be used at the temple? They are being kept away. People can view them, but they can't touch them because they must be without blemish. They are training the priests, the Levite priests, for the sacrifices. The temple, I am certain, has been planned out architecturally. It will be rebuilt during the tribulation. There will a man come that while everything's in chaos, and it's in chaos right now, it's going to get worse, that's going to come and bring peace. He's going to have all the answers. Everybody else is freaking out. You know, what do we do? How do we handle this? And he's going to have all the answers. That will be the son of perdition, the man of the Antichrist, who I believe is a demon waiting to be released from the pit. And he's going to come as a man. And for 3.5 years there will be peace. But then he's going to desecrate the temple, declare himself God, and it all goes south from there. They're getting ready. Some countries are placing chips in people. That's what the mark of the beast is going to be, a chip placed under your skin. If you get left behind, if you are still here, it is not too late. Do not accept this, because if you do, you have doomed yourself eternally. You can be saved during the rapture. It may be at the cost of your life, and probably will. But how many of us sitting here today are going to be alive when it happens? We don't know. I love what Paul says, for me to live as Christ, to die as gain. It's a win-win situation, either way. It's going to be a little bit worse for those. I can't even imagine. I don't want to imagine. I don't want to be a part of it. But we know the rebirth of Israel. That is the beginning. And we watch. We look back through our history as things have happened. Now, how they are continually happening. They're speeding up. Earthquakes, famines. Yeah, there's famines. Russia's not selling wheat now. Or they've driven the prices up so high people can't afford it. Our heartland is dry, just like we are here. There are plans from the globalist elites to cut back on farming, and they're already doing it. They're already doing it. Stopping people from farming, culling the cows because they're farting in bourbon and destroying the atmosphere. Ain't that stupid? They're taken away. They want us to die. They're there's too many people on the earth. They want to be the ones here to enjoy everything and be slave masters over everyone else. It ain't gonna happen. God has the final say. And we are to trust and pray and watch. That is what we're to do. Don't worry. It's not going to do you any good. It's not going to make you any taller. Have faith. Will I find any faith on earth when I return? Yep. Stand strong. Be alert. Be a watchman. Look at the signs. Watch for the signs. They're right in front of your face. Are we the last generation? I don't know. Quite possibly. I do know that Russia has nuclear capability in Ukraine right now. So, don't be afraid. Look up, for your redemption draws near. So I want to pray about that. I always ask you, do you know that you know that you know? At the sound of the trumpet and his church is called, are you going to hear him? Are you going to be the one that's called? Are you going to be one left behind thinking, well, I was sure I was saved? Make sure that you know our time's short, even shorter than we think.